Good evening and welcome, everybody. My name is Gabriel Spitzer. I work for KNKX, public radio station here in Seattle, Tacoma area. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to start by acknowledging that we are on the sacred and traditional land of the Duwamish people, and we thank them for allowing us to be here and to have our event. A couple of housekeeping things to keep in mind. For starters, of course, if everyone could please turn your phones to silent, or better yet, off, or better yet, just leave them outside. Also, there's no intermission in this program, so if you do need to take a little break, we would ask that you do that in between the storytellers. The stories are not that long, so if you feel the urge, just, sit tight for a minute and you'll get an opportunity very, very soon. I want to say thank you, of course, to NAMI Washington and to the Museum of Flight, and thank you so much for taking your Saturday night to come and hear a bunch of stories. So why do we hear stories, right? I have a theory about this. I believe that stories build empathy. And as a storyteller on the radio, that's kind of my religion in the sense that, I do my thing in a little dark booth and I don't see anybody. And so you have to sort of take it on faith that the stories are landing and impacting people. And every piece of evidence I've seen shows that that's true. But one of the great things about live storytelling is that you actually get to watch it happen and experience it yourself and see it register on people's faces. It's a really beautiful thing about live storytelling. So I think it just shows that we are designed to empathize with one another. Human beings are empathy machines. And that's right down to our neural architecture. I mean, if you look inside the brain, the experience of sort of walking in someone's shoes and hearing their story is not much different than experiencing it yourself. This is the way that we are wired. As the old maxim goes, you can't hate somebody whose story you know. So we have a really incredible lineup of storytellers tonight, and one of the great things about their stories is that they reflect the entire breadth of mental health and really reveal it to be just a basic human experience. And as such, it's not just one thing. It's not just struggle or not just triumph. It's often both, but also humor and surprise and love. It's everything. So I'm really grateful. You're in for an absolute treat tonight, and I want to start by welcoming our very first storyteller. I asked the storytellers a couple of questions, just to get to know them a little bit. One of the questions I asked is what the most memorable reaction each teller has gotten to telling their story about mental health struggles in public. And this person talked about giving a presentation at an Our Own Voice program, and talking about a young girl who came up to her and telling her that the story gave her hope and changed her life, and that was just one of a number of reactions like that, and that those now are the moments that give her hope and keep her going too. So please welcome our first storyteller, Emma Volesky.
I'm 6 years old. Stick figures move around my bed, and I can't breathe or look away until they disappear. The next night, white creatures with deformed bodies move across my ceiling. I am petrified. Little do I know that these are hallucinations, but at this time and at this moment, they are very real to me. I'm 7 years old. My parents call me, but I'm laying in fetal position in the back of my closet. Their voices are distant. Emma, Emma, Emma. I am unresponsive. Emma, Emma, Emma. When they find me, I am able to look up and tears are streaming down my face. Mommy, Daddy, I say in a whimpering voice. I want to hold my breath so I can't breathe anymore. This is my way of saying at age 7 that I want to kill myself. I first hear the word bipolar disorder when I am 8 years old. It all comes at me too quick. I have highs and lows, mania and depression. It is all too much. For my mania, I jump up and down on the bed to the couch in an instant. My thoughts are racing so much they can't meet my speaking voice. I'm so irrational, I don't know what to do. But then, within a blink of an eye, or as quick as a heartbeat, I'm depressed. I want to slice my wrists. I want to pound my head against the wall. I want to bite my arm or anything. I sleep for 2 days straight, if not more. I'm in 3rd grade. My teacher is teaching and my classmates are listening intently. All I can think of is looking outside the window and wanting to fly. In my grandiosity, I believe I can fly. So I jump on my desk, make the noises as an airplane, vroom, vroom, and jump off only to have my expectations shattered. I am no airplane. I'm a fool, and I'm a loner. 5th grade comes around. A different teacher is teaching, and my classmates are listening intently again. I'm paranoid. I'm ashamed. Everyone's looking at me and laughing at me. This is all in my head. It may not be real to others, but it is so real to me. I want to go home. That's the only thing I can think of. I want to escape. It's November outside. It is cold, so cold. I take off my shoes and I run the 2 miles I need to my house barefoot, with snow blistering in my feet. When I get home, I see my parents by the phone, and it is eerie familiar, just like I was when I was 7. My mom drops the phone with tears in her eyes, and she is in frantic mode. And she asked me what I did wrong. What was wrong? I am this time unresponsive because I don't know what's going on with myself. All I know is I am very scared again. The next week I go back into 5th grade. My principal says I have to stay in the classroom with him. No recess, no lunch, only bathroom breaks with a person to follow me, an adult. I don't understand. I just don't. I don't know what's going on. Why me? Doesn't make any sense again. Nothing makes sense. I just want comfort. Just comfort, any comfort. So, with the last ounce of ability I have, I just want to go around the corner and talk to my school counselor. But in the end, my principal grabs my arm so firmly it almost hurts and takes me back to the office. Then I realize I just want to be understood, but I'm not. All up until this time, I thought my normal was what I was. But in reality, right then and there, it hits me as I walk through my classroom back to the principal rooms. I am different. Also, I soon learn that I also have obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. I can't move until I ask 5 questions. I can't go to bed until I use the bathroom. Numbers go through my head. I am stuck in place and cannot move 1 step unless my clothes fit right. And beyond that, I'm soon diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. The hallucinations, the delusions, it makes sense, but it doesn't. I'm in 6th grade. I'm sitting around gym, and there are people right next to me, my classmates, my peers. They start talking about mental illness, and bipolar disorder comes up. They go, mental illness is mental retardation. I am suddenly irked at this. I don't understand why they would say that, so I need to defend it. No, I'm bipolar, or I have bipolar, so I know it's not. I would know, so it's okay to be mentally ill and not be mentally retarded. They shut me down. I am like this complete wreck inside, but I am very quiet at the same time. I will be shut down for years to come. It's freshman year. My mind is going so fast yet so slow. The knife in front of me is so disturbingly welcome. Why that doesn't make sense, but right now it's the only sense that makes sense to me. The knife is the only thing I need right now, the thing I want right now. I need to end my life. This is all too much. But then I get closer to it. I grab it and stare at it. Through the blinds, the light shines on it, and it seems like my saving grace. I need to end my life right here, right now. But my parents come home, and when they see me, I drop the knife and run to my room. The next thing that happens is a whirlwind of events. I'm soon taken to a hospital in Missoula, Montana. The instructions the nurses give me, I follow them like a zombie. Eat, drink, eat, drink, and the processes of going from places in between in the hospital. When it's done, I am soon able to be okay with where I am, and I feel good. But still, there's a long way to go. Sometimes my mental illness makes me feel like I'm being swallowed whole, with a shadow following me, or I'm in a bottomless pit and I can't get out of. Or that there's just a ton, like a rock on my chest that's impossible to lift up. And I am just terrified. I don't know what makes me make this decision, but my junior year in high school, my teacher asked me to come up and share a story about mental illness in the 1950s. I mean, it's U.S. history, so I guess I could do that. But in my mind, I think, well, maybe this is okay to share my story. I take a deep breath, and I go to the front of my class, and I start talking. My name is Emma Volesky. In 1998, my aunt killed herself. It turns out she was just bipolar, just like me. That was my aunt, me sharing my part of the story, and I continue telling mine. After I'm done speaking, there's dead silence. I think I immediately did something wrong. I flash back to that year in 6th grade or middle school when I'm in the middle of the ground with where I was called mentally retarded. But after that end of silence, there's a huge round of applause. This is my life-changing moment. This is my calling. I feel like it is so important to me. I made the best decision of my life. This is just a miracle. Throughout high school, I'm able to graduate even throughout all the bullying. I get my high school diploma. That is one of my biggest successes. And then I'm introduced to NAMI. I end up being the keynote speaker in the NAMI 2011 Helena, Montana walk. And then I'm able to speak through a lot more places, and I soon find myself in NAMI, Washington, where I'm very involved. My friends and family have been a huge help to me throughout this life, and I don't know where I'd be without them. I published my book, Staying Sane, A Struggler's Survival, back in 2014. I'm trained in 5 NAMI classes: Inner Voice, Ending the Silence, Parents and Teachers as Allies, Connections, and Peer-to-Peer. I am who I am, and my mental illness is a part of who I am, but that part does not define me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. So I mentioned that I've been asking each of the tellers to answer a couple questions. And since we're at the Museum of Flight, I asked everyone, if you could fly somewhere tomorrow, cost were no object, where would it go? So our next teller said that he would go to Strasbourg, France. And he mentions the architecture and the history. And then he gets down to the real reason. He thinks it'd be very cozy to go sit in a cafe, somewhere warm, drinking coffee and eating pastries until I hurt. So Doug, I feel like Doug gets me in a lot of ways. He says that he hopes that telling his story and being open and honest about his struggles will illuminate something for someone in the audience, even one person, and help them deal with their mental health struggles, maybe a little bit differently, a little bit more informed than him. So our next teller, please welcome him. His name is Doug Boling.
It's 2015. I am unemployed. My wife is a high-powered private attorney in downtown Seattle. I can barely peel myself out of bed by noon every day, let alone work up the energy to shower. And she is also 8 months pregnant. And she really, really needs me to build a crib. And to be honest, I really want to build the crib too. Every time she asks me, I think, yeah, I want to build the crib. I want to build the crib. And I think about building the crib when I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling, when I'm laying on the couch staring at the TV, when I'm sitting on the floor of my future daughter's bedroom staring at the unopened box of the crib. And every time I think about it, and every time I don't build that crib, I'm filled with more and more self-loathing. And she becomes so exasperated that she tells me, Doug, I'm not sure I can do this with you. You need to figure this out. You haven't done anything on the list. I don't see how this is going to work if I don't have a full partner as a parent. And the thing is, she's not wrong. She's right. I don't think I can do it. How can I be a parent if I can't build a crib? I'm a combat veteran of the 82nd Airborne Division. I'm a former law enforcement officer. I graduated in the top of my class from law school, and I can't build a crib. And that darkness that was in me that sapped all my energy, that wasn't the first time that had been there. I'm 11 years old. I'm sitting in the toy room off of my bedroom in my childhood home, and there's cold light streaming through the window. I'm sitting on the ground, and I'm holding a steak knife. And I place it to my chest, and I feel the point prick into my skin. That was the first time in my life that darkness had started spreading through my chest and spreading through my body like disease through a dying tree. And that steak knife was the only way I thought I could show my parents that pain that I was experiencing. Because to them, all they could see was that I was one of the smart kids. I was smiling on the outside. But I was failing science. I'm not even bad at science. I just couldn't do my worksheets. And I thought to myself, I'm one of the smart kids. Why can't I just do my worksheets? Why am I failing science? Unfortunately, I didn't keep pressing that knife into my chest. I put it down. Instead, I wrote a poem about that knife. And my mom found it. And she took action and sent me to therapy. And I think therapy at 11 years old saved my life, but it wasn't the end of dealing with depression, with that dark, diseased feeling spreading through my spirit. And I continued to struggle with it throughout young adulthood, through breakups and more bad grades and employment problems, until somehow I ended up in the middle of a combat zone in Iraq in 2005. And I'm standing at parade arrest, and I'm getting screamed at by this Eye of Sauron level evil NCO that was in charge of me at the time. And I can't even remember what he was saying to me. I was just thinking, how could I forget my weapon in the bathroom? How can I be a good soldier if I can't keep track of my weapon? And on top of that, I wasn't even doing the things that I wanted to do. That darkness was spreading through me because I was separated from my friends. I was working in a headquarters unit, running the radios and driving Humvees for senior officers. I joined the Army because I wanted to go to combat. I'm not in combat with my friends because I got injured in training. And before you get tempted to think that there's a sexy story behind that, like I fell out of a helicopter or something, I had catastrophic heat stroke in North Carolina in June after eating some bad Taco Bell and drinking too much and going for a 5-mile run on Monday morning with the company. And then a few years later, in 2009, I'm in Seattle and I'm working as a law enforcement officer, and I'm driving and I see someone threatening someone else with a length of board. And I pull my car over and I jump out and I pull my weapon on him, not realizing in my sleep-deprived, fuzzy haze that I'm violating about 10 policies when I'm doing that. Don't worry, nobody gets hurt. I put my weapon away and somebody else, another agency, takes custody of him. And in 2009, I was going through a breakup with my girlfriend of almost 8 years. And she tells me she's in love with somebody else. He just has so much more joy for life than you do. And strangely enough, around that time is the time that I meet my future wife, the one who really, really, really wants me to build the crib, fast forwarding to 2015. And she meets me in the depths of this depression, and she knows that I'm going through it, and for some reason, she still likes me. But she and I are both laboring under the illusion at the time that maybe I'm just depression prone. Maybe it's just situational. And that if I meet the right person or if I get the right job, I tick the right marks in my life, that maybe I won't have to deal with depression anymore. That maybe if I just avoid those situations, if I can nimbly skirt around life's problems, that I won't have another major depressive episode. But then it's 2015 again, and I'm staring at that crib box, and my daughter is on the way. And that's a situation I can't avoid. And after weeks of urging, as many times or more than she asked me to build the crib, my wife asks me to go to therapy. And in what felt like a Herculean feat at the time, I called probably 5 or 6 different therapists trying to find the right one. And one, I hate talking on the phone, and talking on the phone with depression is even worse. And I go to therapy for years. And finally, one day, I have a breakthrough, and isn't even in the therapy room. I stumble across a relic from my life, a live journal post from 2007 after I got out of the Army. And if you know what live journal is, you know how embarrassing that statement is. And I'm talking about how I'm out of the Army and I can't find a job. Like, I feel worthless. Am I always going to feel this way? Am I always going to be dealing with this? And all of a sudden, I was looking at my illness from 30,000 feet. And then I brought that in to my therapist. And talking it over, I came to realize that I wasn't just depression prone, that it wasn't just situational depression, that I had recurrent major depressive disorder. And instead of that feeling like a burden, that was freeing. I felt relieved because I didn't have to blame myself anymore for just not avoiding the right situations. And now things are so much better than I could have even realized on that day when I was 11 years old, poking that steak knife into my chest. I never did build that crib. My wife built it, I think 8 or 9 months pregnant. I'm sorry, Katie. But I've got a beautiful 4.5-year-old daughter who is on her way to loving Star Wars even more than I do. I have a 1.5-year-old son who cracks me up every day and thinks everything with 4 legs is a dog. And I've been working for 3 years as a trial attorney, doing very well for myself. Things that I wouldn't even thought possible in the depths of my depression in 2015. And one of the things about having major depressive disorder, recurrent major depressive disorder, is worrying that maybe I'm not just going to pass on my eye color to my children, that maybe I'll pass on the disease too. But even if I do, I know that even though I've tried to stack up all these heroic things in my life to prove something to myself, I know that there's heroism in the everyday act of being a good role model to my children so that they don't have a 30-year learning curve if they have my disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Our next teller is a really special person. Among other reasons, she was the chair of the Brainpower Chronicles, the first edition of it and is one of the people responsible for bringing storytelling and NAMI together. And tonight she's going to share her own story. I had asked folks, what some of the most memorable reactions they had gotten to sharing their story in the past. And the reaction that she describes was a gasp, a group gasp. And the reaction was to her telling a group of people that a health clinic that her family had been going to religiously for 15 years had just learned that there was mental illness in her family and, quote, fired them. And the excuse they gave was non-payment of a $35 bill. So that was early on in the journey for her, and I think we've all come a long way since then, and I know she has in particular. Please welcome our next storyteller, Dinah Aldrich.
I see her down the hall. Business suit, professionally styled hair, tasteful accessories. She slumps, as though without the counter that wraps around the hospital reception desk, she wouldn't have the strength to stand. She gasps and then mumbles something. It sounds like, I don't know what to do. Another deep breath, a sob. Will somebody please tell me what to do? My feet had been where hers were, and I knew. For the first time in a long time, I knew what to do. For me, it started when my son returned from 5 months of international travel. First, things were strange, and then it got really tough. Every night, right around dinner time, panic demands my attention. He brings his backpack up into the kitchen. It's one of those big packs, the kind that parents buy their kids right before they go off to college on the East Coast. He goes into the pantry, and though the pack is stuffed to the point of seams ripping, he grabs a can of beans and a cast iron pan and jams them inside. I try to convince him, why don't you stay home tonight? On Mother's Day, I stoop to begging him to ignore the setting sun. But he leaves that night. He leaves every night, always at night, always through the back door. He says he's not worthy of using the front door anymore. One night I go in the kitchen and I see that big backpack, and I don't see him. He comes out of the pantry with his arms full of cans, trying to fit them all inside. Unable to convince him to stay home, I slide down the wall to the floor, weeping. That's right, Mom. You should cry. Cry for injustice. Cry for hunger. Cry for world peace. But you don't need to cry for me. I am, though, crying myself to sleep most nights, waiting for a phone call. My son is lost somewhere in the city. He's out there searching for something in the dark, and something demands he travel. I'm the mom. I'm supposed to know how to fix this. All the professionals I talk to say, do you know about NAMI? You'll meet other families like you who are in similar situations, and you can learn from them. I don't want to talk to families. I want to talk to the experts. Well, as it turns out, those of us with lived experience are the experts. At my first NAMI family support group meeting, I cry for 30 minutes. Then I start listening and participating. I find myself picked up, propped up, supported in my journey of education, advocacy, and hope. You can't know what nobody told you. I say that a lot. You cannot know what nobody told you. None of us moms believe it, though. Moms are supposed to know. At a first week of a family-to-family class, 22 strangers wander in, looking uncomfortable. Some of them are sad. All of us are desperate to find the confidence we had before major mental illness joined our families. One night, about the fourth week of class, I go out to the parking lot with another mom, and as we walk, I look, and she just looks tired, just worn out. We walk, and she turns to me and says, "Sometimes I think I'd like to dig a hole in the backyard and bury myself, just to rest for a while." My compassion was insignificant beside her unshed tears. As the weeks go by, in family-to-family class, community builds, and people remember how to laugh again. We start to make friends, and we start to know in a place where it's safe to talk about what's really going on in our lives. Now I volunteer for NAMI. I lead family-to-family class. I facilitate support groups. I'm a state trainer, and I served on the NAMI Washington Executive Board. It's 2019, and I'm leading a family-to-family class. We're talking about stigma. I tell a story and then ask for a show of hands. Raise your hand if you've received a casserole when your loved one was in the hospital or at any time as you've supported their mental health journey. 22 hands, well, 44. We each have 2. 44 hands do not move. I've been leading family to family for a lot of years, and I ask that question at every class. No one has ever raised their hand. People don't understand and don't remember that mental illness is a physical illness. They hesitate to walk towards something that's so unknown. People want to help, they just don't know how. Remember that woman at the hospital reception desk? I saw her down the hall. Her feet are where my feet had once been. Her anguish was the same anguish that I had felt. And I knew what to do. She tells me she's staying in a hotel that she can't afford, not far from the hospital. She's rented a car she doesn't know how she'll pay for. Her daughter's had a mental health crisis and won't let her visit. I invite her to my house. She follows me home, and I feed her a plate of leftovers. They weren't even good leftovers, but we talk and take comfort from one another. 2 moms who are beginning to understand that this may be our new version of normal. After I met her, it was clear that I did not know enough. I take classes so I can teach classes. I follow a script, but it's you who teach me. I decide to complete a certificate in social enterprise leadership. I buy a domain name, finish my business plan, and hope to start a social enterprise. Now let me tell you about today. So my son this year was accepted to the Port Townsend Studio Art Tour. It was months of stress, planning, painting, preparing, He was preparing for strangers to visit him in his home studio. And then he had a successful tour. He sold 3 paintings. And one day I went to visit him at his house. It was one of those early spring days, a glorious day on the Olympic Peninsula where the buds are just bursting out on the cherry trees, the blackberry vines are threatening, and I see a perfect-sized garden where I can dig. So I'm digging in the garden. He sits a ways off smoking, and we talk or are silent. He brings me fizzy beverages. And when it's time for me to go, I say, "Thanks for having this garden and for letting me dig in it today." And my son says, "That's what I want for you, Mom. I want you to be able to come here and do something you can't do at your own house. I want you to be able to come here and have a sense of purpose. And when you come to my house, I want you to find peace." Thank you.
Thank you, Dinah. When I asked this next storyteller what the most memorable reaction she had gotten to telling her story about mental health struggles in public, she talked about telling a story at university and being approached afterward by a member of the audience, a boy who had seen her talk at an earlier time at his high school. And the boy said that after she shared her story there, he had noticed a positive shift in his school environment. And notably, students were more comfortable talking about mental health, and that many individuals were much more understanding, which should give us all a little bit of hope. Please welcome our next storyteller, Alyssa Meaker.
I sit at the edge of my bed with my eyes closed, struggling to breathe. I feel the dull sensation of ice packs touch my neck and my inner thighs. The scent of lavender oil fills my nose, and eventually I gain the courage to open my eyes. And in front of me, I see my mother. At least I think it is, but I'm not really sure. At the age of 15, I'm on a four-wheeler with really the only friend left that I had at the time. And we were doing all the things that I loved doing. I was excited, I was having fun. At least I think I was. But I wasn't really sure. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't really feeling anything. And I thought, when was the last time I really felt anything? It's probably been a couple of weeks. And that's really alarming to me because I'm a very emotional person. I feel things very passionately and deeply. And so later that day, I go home to my mother. I find her in the kitchen and I break down to her. And I tell her, something is wrong, but not like the last time, so I don't know what to do. A few weeks later, I'm sitting in a very familiar room, and in front of me is my therapist, the same one that diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder the year before at the age of 14. And I felt a little bit defeated in that same office that I thought I had graduated from. After speaking with her that day, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And then she told me that it would probably be a good idea to start medication. And I felt this sense of relief because, who doesn't want a magic pill that's going to fix their whole life? So I was really excited to get on those pills and just make friends again and do whatever I needed to do to be happy. But unfortunately, I had a bad reaction to those medications. And the suicidal ideations that I had had for several months were now serious thoughts. And they evolved into this plan that I kept in my back pocket, just waiting for that little flicker of hope to leave so that I could pull it out and move forward with my plans. Several weeks later, I remember being home alone. I wasn't really home alone, but I have 6 brothers and 2 parents, so having one sibling in the other room was as alone as I was ever going to get. And I remember thinking that, you know what, the sharp objects and the pills that my parents have hid are probably in their bedroom. So I decided to go in there and look, just in case I needed something. But I wasn't really gonna do anything, I just wanted to find something. But as I searched, I became frantic, thinking, no, I need to find those pills. I need to find an object, I need to move forward with this plan now. And then I stop in my tracks. And this thought pops in my head that says, you were sent here for a reason and you have a path laid out for you, and that's what you need to follow. And I remember thinking, but I have this path that I want to go down with. How am I supposed to trust this other path that moves past today? I don't understand. But I decide to trust that grudgingly, and I move forward with my life. And after that, I pretty much just coasted. I wasn't very suicidal anymore, but I wasn't getting better. Later that year, at the age of 15, I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. And sitting in the audience, surrounded by thousands of people, was the first time I didn't feel alone in a long time. Because on stage, I saw a dancer doing a dance to portray his struggle with mental illness. And in that moment, I realized, wait a second, my therapist isn't lying to me, my mom isn't lying to me. There are other people living with mental illness. I'm not the only one. Because I had felt like a freak for so long, and finally, I had that push that I needed to stop coasting. And after the medication started to work, I had the anxiety lift a bit and the depression lift a bit, but I realized there were these symptoms that were still there that hadn't gone away. Everything was just really hazy and floaty and dreamlike, almost like when you're driving down a highway in the dark for 3 hours and you get that tunnel vision. Or that feeling when you're dreaming and you know that you're in a dream, but you're not awake. Or almost as if you're walking through the world and there's this pane of glass in front of you. And you know what's in front of you is real. You know that people are real, that everything is real, but it doesn't feel like it. I sometimes, quite often, wasn't able to feel parts of my body like my hands and my arms. And when I looked in the mirror, logically I knew that was me, that was my reflection, but it didn't seem like it. So there was this disconnect. And after explaining this to my therapist, she was a little puzzled, so she went on to Google and started Googling my symptoms. I took a couple quizzes and she found out that I had depersonalization disorder and derealization disorder. Now these dissociative disorders are so rare that even my therapist was like, I don't really know what to do here, but that's clearly what you have. And so I thought, okay, that's great. So we know how to fix anxiety and depression, but not this thing. So that's fantastic. That was a lot of pressure to be on a 15-year-old. But I keep going to therapy, I keep doing my homework, I keep taking my medication. And it was a lot of hard work, but 16, 17, and 18 went relatively well. I started making really good relationships with people. I started college at the age of 16. And then I moved up to a different part of Washington to finish up my degree. And that's when everything started to take a turn again. I hadn't been on medication for about 8 months because I didn't need it anymore. I was doing so well. I was flourishing and thriving. But then all of a sudden, with these environmental changes and weather changes and everything all at once, the anxiety hit hard again, the depression hit hard again, and my dissociative episodes became more frequent and a lot more intense. And all I knew was, I need to pass this quarter. I can't fail my classes. That's not who I am. And so I was struggling. My mom was trying to help me with homework. I was just trying to do everything I could to just stay above water and breathe and pass my classes. And one day, I'm standing in the shower, and I see my razor on a shelf. And I don't know why, but I pick it up, and I snap the head off. And I grab a pair of toenail clippers, and I clip the plastic edges that are supposed to protect my skin. And I take that razor and I start cutting into my arm. I don't know why, but what I do know is when I'm done, I go back to my room, I pull out my laptop and I finish my homework, something I hadn't been able to do that whole quarter. So then I realized, okay, awesome. So if I just take this razor, I have this quick fix where I can do what I need to do, and then it doesn't matter if I sleep for the rest of the day or don't talk to anyone, because this is all I need to do. But after a couple months, that coping mechanism turned into an addiction. And the week before my Christmas break, I remember calling my mom and saying, I need to go to a hospital for Christmas break, because I know how to handle anxiety and depression and even this weird dissociative disorder now, but I don't know how to stop hurting myself physically. And it's not something I want you to see or my family to see. And she said, okay, I'm going to prepare everything just in case, but let's see if your family and your friends can help. So I thought, okay, that's fine, because I have my safety net of the hospital. And things were going pretty well for the first couple weeks. I was really struggling not having any sharp objects to just help me do that quick fix. And then on Christmas Day, I'm laying in bed, eyes closed, struggling to breathe again. Christmas has been hard for me for the last 8 years. And in my head, it's the end of the year, a whole year has gone by, I'm a year older, and then, time is fleeting. And so pretty much in my head, Christmas equals death, not Santa Claus and happiness. So that's what I was thinking when I woke up that Christmas morning. And so I go to my bag and I pull out a razor blade that I had hidden from my mom. And I lock myself in the bathroom because I'm thinking, my family is waiting for me so that we can all go downstairs and open presents together. And I need to be able to get myself to do that. So I start cutting just a little bit too deep that time. And my mom finally figures out where I am and what I'm doing. And she starts banging on the door. Finally, I snap back to reality and I see the mess that I've made. I start wiping up my arm, the counter, the sink, and I finally open the door. And she runs in and puts her hands on my shoulder and starts shaking me. And she says, "This has to stop. You have to stop." And in that moment, I realized that I had been coasting again. I wasn't really getting worse, but I wasn't really getting better. And I realized I needed to do something now. And since then, I've had relapses, I've had panic attacks, I've had dissociative episodes where I've had to question if I'm awake or asleep. But the difference is I'm motivated to live the life that I was sent here to live. I remember that thought that popped into my head when I was 15. I decided to live that day for a reason, and that's why I do what I do today. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology at the age of 20. I am happily married to my husband, who is incredible. And I'm in a transition phase of my life, and I'm trying to figure things out. But one thing that I know is that I need to keep pushing and keep leaning on my support and doing everything that I need to do to live the life that I was sent here to live. Thank you.
Well, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know about you guys. I think it's amazingly courageous of the 4 storytellers that we've heard so far to come and stand up in front of a group of strangers and tell such intimate and hurtful and hopeful stories. And can we give them another round of applause for all 4 of them? Yeah. My name is Olivette, Orme, and I am on the board of directors for NAMI Washington. I'm from Spokane, Washington, and I'm also on the board of directors for the affiliate in Spokane, and I am, like one of the speakers, a family-to-family teacher, so I volunteer to lead that program in Spokane. Are there any other family-to-family Teachers? Yeah, raise your hands really high. How about other signature program leaders, peer-to-peer or connections or any of those? Thank you, all of you. Let's give thank you for volunteering, and thank you for everything that you give to your communities and to those people who live with mental illness and their families in your community. Tonight is a fundraiser for NAMI Washington. You've probably figured that out already. The tickets that you bought tonight are part of that fundraising effort. I'm here because I am proud to ask you to go a little bit further. NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is a nationwide program. It was started 40 years ago, and its purpose is to help the millions of Americans who live with or affected by mental illness. NAMI Washington is one of 48 state offices. I always feel really sorry for whichever 2 states don't have a NAMI. But in Washington, we do. And we do many things here in Washington. But I think, for me, the most important things that we do are we support our educational programs and our advocacy leadership. We do that for 19 affiliates in our state. And what that means is that in 19 different communities, so from Spokane to Seattle, or from Bellingham to Yakima, from Mount Vernon to Walla Walla, our communities are stronger and better because NAMI is there helping the people who are affected by mental illness. Now, NAMI does that by training people to do these programs. So everybody that raised their hands knows that they went to training, and one of our speakers tonight says she is a trainer. And what that means is that NAMI Washington pays for all of those people to fly, pays for that trainer to fly back to Washington, D.C., where the national office pays them or trains them, and then they fly back to Washington, and NAMI sends them again out into to our communities where they're trained, the program leaders are trained, and all of that sending costs a lot of money. Tonight, I am, as I always am, very proud to stand up and ask people to make donations to NAMI. I think that the work that we do is incredibly important. You will see, if you look in your seats in front of you, you will see little envelopes, and I guess if you're in the front row, they're somewhere else. I don't know where they put them. But if you, there are envelopes, and there are NAMI staff members with baskets. And the reason that I'm asking you to make a contribution now is because if you're like me, you could lose that envelope in the car, in between the seats of your car, or you could, I don't know, it gets lost on your kitchen counter, you could forget. But we would like for you to make a contribution now. And the people that you see with baskets, can you guys wave? Because I can't really see. They are going to be passing those baskets around. We'd like for you to fill out those envelopes or use your NAMI pens to write checks. You can, or you can do a credit card pledge. You can make a one-time contribution, or we'd be really happy for you to make a sustaining contribution. Obviously, you can make a one-time contribution of $100, but if you do that every month, that ends up at $1,200, and NAMI is ecstatic to accept your donation at any time that it comes. So we'd like for you to fill out those envelopes, and that's why they turned the lights on, so I can't really see you. As you are filling out those envelopes, and I want to see everybody scribbling. I can't really see you, so I hope you're scribbling. Yeah. What I want you to think about is how much you would spend on a nice dinner. I want you to think about how much you might spend on dinner and a movie, because I know at least that's not a cheap entertainment option anymore. In Spokane, I would say, how much do you want to spend on your Gonzaga basketball tickets or a symphony performance? And when you think about that, I want you to think about that amount, and then I want you to think about those people in your communities who might attend a family-to-family class or a peer-to-peer class, and how their lives could be different. I'd like for you to think about that military veteran who, if he or she could attend a home front class, how much less desperate they might feel. And I'd like for you to think about that high school or college student that we just kind of heard from, and how they might not feel so alone if they had access to one of NAMI's Ending the Silence program. So please, I hope you're writing. I hope you will give generously to NAMI Washington, and I hope you'll enjoy the last of our 3 speakers. Thank you so much.
Next time, I'm going to bring tote bags for everybody. Thank you so much, everybody. Our next storyteller, when I asked him why he wanted to tell his story, he said simply that he hopes that people will hear it and that they will learn that there is a way back from addiction and from mental illness. And when I asked him where he would fly, if he could fly anywhere in the world, the answer was Australia, so I can hear people tell me they like my accent. Please welcome our next speaker, Ty Reed.
Good day. I guess I should have known that I was in trouble when, although he wasn't a doctor, my father came into my home to see me and make a house call. And usually when I saw my father, it was at his place over dinner with he and my stepmother, and the conversation was usually pretty benign, fairly shallow. But today, it's deadly serious. My second wife has just told my father that my crack and alcohol habits are out of control. And now he's giving me the talk. It's 2003, and we're sitting on the couch in my living room. And my father is a person who I love dearly, but also resent very deeply. Not because he's a bad parent or anything. He was always great to me, but he was always right about everything. And that drove me nuts. As we sit together, he tells me about how drugs and alcohol have affected extended members of our family, both physically and mentally. If you don't stop doing drugs right now, he says, Take a look around. This is the best your life is gonna get. Now that's what he said, but what I heard was, you're disappointing me again, and I'm giving you my unsolicited opinion. And I felt this really weird mix of defiance and anger. Earlier in the week, when he had initially heard that I was doing drugs, he immediately changed the locks on his house without even having a conversation with me. That made me angry. And now he's sitting in my living room and he's having a conversation with me, and that made me angry. I pretty much decided right away to ignore him, and I reveled in the fact that over the next few years, life threw money and applause my way. I was succeeding and I was proving him wrong. Surely, drugs and alcohol couldn't take someone as smart as me down. I mean, I had managed to get an MBA and to succeed professionally, all while living a life as two people. Daytime corporate good guy and nighttime drug-doing bad guy. But the problem was, he wasn't wrong, because my personal life was an absolute mess. My second wife and I divorced. I had a failed stint in rehab in 2009. And I'm sure that many of us in the audience have heard that old parable about how you can motivate a mule with a carrot or a stick. I am all stick. I respond to pain. That's pretty much my only motivator for doing anything. And my mind, for some reason, was telling me that I hadn't had enough. And what I didn't know was that I wouldn't have enough for quite a while. Now, I'm not sure if any of you know how things go in the storytelling game, but in the storytelling game, that's what we call foreshadowing. Dun, dun, dun. And I hated myself all the time. I had this negative loop that was always playing in my head. And the best way I can describe that to someone who isn't familiar with this is, think of the worst song you can think of. And for me, it happens to be Love Shack by the B-52s. And imagine that every time you're happy or you're sad or you're thinking or you're not thinking, this is the soundtrack to your life. You suck, baby, you suck, baby. That's what it was like. And my relationship with my family was getting worse and worse. My father and stepmother knew that if they were to ask me something, I'd lie, so eventually they just stopped asking. I had the kind of job where I could work from home, so the necessity for me to see normal people was less and less, and my apartment became a refuge for thugs, dealers, criminals, pimps, and pushers. And so, yeah, maybe I should have known I was in trouble when my dad came to see me, and maybe I should have known that I was in trouble when I was drunk and I crashed a car backwards into a highway median at about 50 miles an hour. And maybe I should have known I was in trouble when, on my birthday in a foreign country, I got arrested on suspicion of drunk driving. And maybe, just maybe, I should have known I was in trouble when I was standing in an alley behind a bar completing a drug deal, and in the middle, my drug dealer stopped and looked at me and said, "Ty, I've been seeing you a lot lately. You all right?" So I just want to back up and focus on what just happened here. The person whose job it is to literally sell me death is questioning my mental state. This really made me stop and think that I needed a new drug dealer. And that's exactly what I went and got. But change my life? No. Not me. That stick and I were just getting warmed up. Maybe I should have known I was in trouble when in 2014, after getting evicted from an apartment and being a tornado in the lives of people who cared about me, I, who came from a great family and who had an MBA from the University of Washington, found myself standing on North Aurora Avenue in Seattle, homeless, addicted, and relieved. Not scared. I was relieved to not have to live as two people anymore. The good guy and the bad guy didn't have to struggle with each other. The bad guy got to take over. I took what little piece of me that was good and I put it in the bottom of my backpack because I wouldn't be needing that where I was going. I put the rest of my possessions on top of it, And I got used to the pain of that heavy backpack and the straps on my shoulders digging in. I got used to the feeling of that backpack on my back wrestling for space with the monkey that was already there. And for a while, that bad guy helped me survive the streets. But when that good guy was ready to try to take over my life again, quite frankly, I didn't have any tools to manage. 2015 was the hardest yet most necessary time of my life. In February, much to my parents' relief because they had given me up for dead, I went to rehab. I got out of rehab in March, and I moved into a sober home where I had a lot of trouble staying sober. I wasn't ready to stop yet. I would regularly take the bus from my sober house in South King County all the way up to North Aurora to run the streets, get high, and get drunk with my friends because I hadn't left them behind yet. It's amazing that I survived that time. It's amazing I never got asked to take a drug test. And by this time, I had made the executive decision to, it was an executive decision. I was no longer able to smoke crack like a gentleman. So I switched to meth. Great decision. And my mind was beginning to become affected. When I was high, I was paranoid, and I would hallucinate and see things. And when I wasn't high, I was depressed, and I would sleep 16 to 20 hours a day. One day early in 2015, after being up a couple of days, I was walking down the street in Everett, and I got the feeling that I was being followed. I was being watched, and I was in danger. I ducked into a Denny's to get off the street because why else would anyone go into a Denny's unless they were high? And I ordered a Diet Coke even though I didn't have any money, and I just sat there. But after just a few minutes, I felt like the people in the restaurant were talking about me and watching me. In a panic, I grabbed my backpack and I bolted out the door, across 4 lanes of traffic, fell in a parking lot, tearing my pants, bloodying my knee, and ran into the lobby of a hotel begging to use the phone. I picked up the phone and I called the police, and the policeman was actually very nice. He showed up, and after explaining my situation in what I'm sure was a fairly incoherent fashion, he offered to follow me to the bus station. Now, he might have just been trying to get me out of Everett, who knows? But I was even too scared for him to do that. I went back inside, and the next phone call I made was to my parents. And have you ever been in a situation where something really serious has to happen, and everybody kind of knows, so it's almost like there's no conversation? Now, I'm sure when my parents showed up, they asked me what was going on and what I was scared about, but my memory is that I just got in the back of the car and they drove me directly to the mental hospital, where I stayed for a week and got out with some new meds, and felt better for a time. But later that year, back on drugs, I was arrested, and I did 2 weeks in jail, and I was so fearful when I went into jail. Now, I had been in jail before, so this wasn't a new experience for me, but I was so paranoid and fearful that I requested to be put in solitary confinement. And the craziest part about being in jail for a couple weeks, and the scariest part, is that after a week, kind of started liking the food. The last thing that happened to me in 2015 was that after a time of feeling overwhelmed and shameful and guilty about the things that I had done and just feeling lonely, I attempted to commit suicide. It is only through an act of God that I was unsuccessful in standing here with you today. And then finally, a few months later, I came to the realization that it wasn't the world that was punishing me for the things that I'd done. It wasn't God punishing me because I was a bad person. I was the one holding the stick the whole time. And I finally decided to put it down. I've been in recovery since March of 2016, and while my journey has not been perfect, life today is so much better than it was before. I have a very strong relationship with my family again, and I tell my father that I love him on a regular basis, and these days I even listen to him every now and then. My relationships with my friends have been restored, and for the first time in my life, I like the person that I see when I look in the mirror. I haven't listened to the B-52s in years, thankfully, and I'm in a relationship with someone where I'm an adult now too, which is also new for me. The simple fact is that in America, there are more and more people becoming addicted all the time. But what that also means is that there will be more and more people like me who are seeking help and coming out of addiction and turning their lives around. And those are the type of people that I work with today. I do all that I can to provide opportunity for folks like that coming out of homelessness and addiction, because somebody did that for me. Thank you so much.
I knew I was going to have to do that after Ty. When I asked our next storyteller for one of the most memorable reactions that she had gotten to telling her story about mental health struggles in public, she talked about talking to someone afterwards, a young person, a very young person, like 8 or 9 years old, who said, "Yeah, I used to have a counselor and she helped me learn skills because my feelings used to overcome my thoughts." An 8 or 9-year-old. So I think we have come far indeed. And I want to thank this next storyteller. Please give her a welcome. Her name is Aislin Percival. Aislin Percival.
Tucked away in a blue shoebox at my father's house is a note my 9-year-old self wrote detailing the many reasons I wanted to die. I have bipolar disorder. I developed my first symptoms of depression when I was only 9 years old. For the longest time, I didn't get treatment. And for the longest time after that, the treatments I got didn't work. I tried a million different medications, talk therapy, and still the depression came back. I was able to make it to the middle of college, nursing school, and a concurrent psychology degree before hitting a wall. The inconsistencies in my cycling mood and cognitive abilities and energy finally caught up with me and required me to leave college. Who knew that in the end it would be a TV detective who cured me of this depression? I would tell you more about growing up with early onset bipolar disorder, except that I don't remember it. I received electroconvulsive therapy for over 2 years. Effectively, I was given seizures under medical supervision to hopefully reset the depressed parts of my brain. And a side effect of this treatment is memory loss. So I don't remember anything between around 8th grade in 2004 and age 25 in 2015. So you see, it's hard for me to tell you a story when I myself rely mostly on my own old journals and other people's stories to tell me where I've been. I experienced the loss of these memories as if I had died. I didn't know anybody who could relate to the parts of my story I most needed support around. I didn't think that anybody understood. I didn't know how to form relationships because effectively I had never dated, I had never kissed a boy, I had never grown a friendship from the bottom up. I had lost all of the formative experiences in growing up. So instead, I'll tell you a story I do know. And that story is about PTSD. I have bipolar disorder, but I also have PTSD. And I didn't even know it. I was victimized by those who were supposed to keep me safe. I was told I was a manipulative and attention-seeking person. I was told that I was a bad and spiteful person, and I believed them. I believed and had circulating thoughts that I was weak and broken. I believed I was the biggest disappointment my family had ever had. Like an eternal hamster wheel in my mind, these thoughts just turned over. Only when they were done, I was lost. I had no identity. I wrote in my journal, "You distance yourself in an attempt to escape, the only way to survive. The show is so good that nobody realizes you're just an actor in some very realistic horror film. You are an excellent actor. You lie even better when you're in pain and when you let go of everything. And then all that's left is a mask. And then it's not even a mask anymore, because that implies that something else lies beneath." I swam in guilt and shame every day and contemplated suicide. I thought that I just had to get over it and move on, that the things that they had done to me were my fault, that I'd asked for it. I wrote, "I guess I have already accepted that I will die. I know that a large part of my soul has already died, and now another piece is shriveling and blowing away like dust. I try to convince myself that I'm not weak. It's not my fault, they say, not my fault that I am broken. I don't want to choose between being weak and being broken. Both lead to death." So there I am on the couch at my father's house, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from that closeted suicide note written at 9. Who would have thought that the epiphany that shifted all of my views on reality would come while sitting on my rear on a couch, eating a bowl of popcorn in my pajamas? Law and Order Special Victims Unit, to be exact. Lieutenant Olivia Benson, I owe my life to you. I don't even remember exactly what she said. And I'm not a victim of rape. It's many people's story, but it's not mine. Still, the words she said spoke to me. All of a sudden, I was aware that I was a victim and that I had been allowing my experience to completely control my entire world. For months, her words percolated in my brain, and I began to form new views. My therapist and my psychiatrist helped me with this. And I'm sure that they wondered why it had never been enough for them to tell me that I had PTSD. But I am equally sure to assure them that they set the stage, and that show is just the last shove. I tell my story because my life is much different now. For the first time since 2014, I'm holding a full-time job. It will be a year in January. I'm very much excited about my work anniversary. Thank you. I've found reasons to live for myself when before I was living purely to satisfy those people around me. I was just yesterday reminded that my relationship skills had vastly improved. I was talking with a coworker who also happens to have bipolar disorder, and after teasing each other about our shared illness, he says, "Dude, we have the same dysfunctions." And suddenly these experiences that had been separating me from everyone were connecting me to other people. I'm still sometimes bothered by suicidal thoughts and shame and doubt and anxiety and all of the other things. But most of the time I feel empowered. A wash of emotion still comes over me when I think about the people that hurt me. I feel immense anger. I feel grief at the thought of the life I could have had if they had not interfered. But when I tell my story, I feel vindicated. And I no longer think that I just have to get over it and move on. These experiences changed me. They will always be part of my story. Instead, I can use them. I can do talks like these. I can build new memories. And I remember already that I am strong, I am whole, and I will never be broken.
Thanks, Aislin. This is more my height here. I like this very much. Our last storyteller of the night probably needs no introduction. He co-founded the Brainpower Chronicles along with NAMI of Washington. He's a TED speaker, he is an experienced storyteller and comic, and he's the director of tonight's program. I also asked him what, besides mental illness, you wish you could destigmatize, and he answered spilling coffee and other beverages. I am so with you on that struggle. Please welcome our final storyteller, Bill Bernat.
I was fuming mad as I marched into a meeting I'd called in the big conference room as a 30-something engineering manager at a .com. And before even sitting down, I yelled, "This is bullshit!" I didn't actually say shirt. I was living with bipolar II disorder, severely depressed and deep into year 5 of drug addiction. And I was sure that I wasn't the one with a problem. But I noticed my coworkers started liking me less and less, and that hurt. So back in my early 20s, I was generally pretty popular at work, even though I was secretly super arrogant. And when I say secretly, I mean so secretly that even I didn't know I was arrogant. I just thought I was better than everybody else. I didn't suspect I had a mental illness, even though I'd threatened to kill myself when I was 8 and I'd once walked into a hardware store to buy poison to end my pain. I don't think I was serious about it because as I walked the brightly lit aisles, perusing the various hazardous chemicals, I started to worry that they would taste bad. Like, I have a sweet tooth. I wasn't gonna drink Drano. And I obviously couldn't ask the staff which weed killer was the most delicious. What are they gonna say? Yeah, I recommend Weed Be Gone, pumpkin spice flavor. As I progressed through my 20s, my highs and lows got wilder and wilder, and I tried to compensate with hard drugs, which, by the way, if you're thinking of trying that, I've done the testing for you, it doesn't work. Like, if I had bought them on Amazon, I would have given them 1-star review. And then I was actually surprised when I couldn't quit. Like, what? I overdosed, and I'm only alive because the person I was with knew to give me mouth-to-mouth until paramedics arrived with Narcan. In my early 30s, I received my first invitation to stay in a hospital's locked behavioral health unit on suicide watch. Well, I thought it was an invitation. It turned out they weren't asking. I was processed into the unit, and I asked one of the admin staff to call my boss at this bank where I worked in IT to tell him that because we were doing this project rollout, and I told her to tell him to delay it because I couldn't be on site to support it. And she never made the call because she thought I was just delusionally imagining that I had a computer job at a bank. This was the late 90s. I think today, if you show up in a psych ward and say you work in technology, they'll believe you. Every story I'd ever heard about depression, about people who needed treatment for depression, they'd ended up judged, lonely, and miserable. So when I was released, I didn't get treatment because depression has a branding problem, right? No company would ever talk about their product the way our society talks about depression and treatment. Can you imagine the head of marketing for a car company saying, like, okay, here's the marketing strategy for our new car model. We're gonna call it the Disorder. And our ads will show sad people driving alone aimlessly while an out-of-tune piano plays REM's Everybody Hurts. And the camera will zoom in on the GPS and the destination will read, "Why even bother?" And then the announcer will say, "The disorder, the car you'll want to hide because it makes other people uncomfortable." Without treatment, I kept getting worse. A couple years later, I took that .com job I mentioned where everybody had a problem except me. Over the next several years, I lost everything. And I got a second invitation to stay in a hospital's locked behavioral health unit. But this time, something amazing happened. One night after dinner, I was sitting in this sterile TV/dining area with one other patient. There was a calming honesty in the air, the comfort of not having to hide who you are. And she told me what was going on in her life and inside her as she drove her Jeep to the edge of the Grand Canyon and sat there revving the engine, why she didn't drive over and what she might do next in her life. I told her about my attempt, which didn't involve any of the world's 7 natural wonders. That simple human bonding made me feel like I was already awesome just being exactly who I was. And it felt so good that I started asking other patients for their stories. And I saw that they were kind, smart, humble people with this amazing inner strength. Going in there, I had never felt more alone or broken or like a freak. And after those connecting, comfortable conversations, I'd never felt more like I belonged in the world. I went back to work in technology with total humility because I didn't even know if I could keep a good job. Instead of desperately grasping for chances to outshine coworkers, I tried to figure out what they needed for their interactions with me to be more pleasant. I checked myself into treatment for addiction. And the heart of 12-step meetings is just stories, raw stories from people on the edge, trying to fight for survival, and then other people who've been there talking about how they got clean. Well, when I had 2 years clean, I was still super depressed and kind of pissed off about it. I was like, recovery is a ripoff. Where the hell is my freaking inner peace and my goddamn effervescent joy? But other people in recovery told me that they had passed through the same thing, and it gave me hope. Instead of drowning in negative thoughts like I had done my whole life, I started saying to myself, Bill, this is your situation, right, wrong, fair, unfair, your fault, not your fault, irrelevant. What are you going to do about it? Well, I talked to my doctor, and he put me on antidepressants, and I insisted I would only do 3 months. And he said, yeah, well, we have kind of a rule of thumb, which is don't go off antidepressants in Seattle in the winter. I took his advice and later did a course of therapy. I also put a lot of my own time and energy into mindfulness, kind of putting a cushion between me and my thoughts and feelings. I meditated badly, like I drank coffee while meditating. I still do that, but I did finally make a rule, no Facebooking. So my doctor had also given me some sleeping pills for insomnia, but after I was sleeping well again, I kept refilling the prescription and hoarding the pills because even though I was feeling good, all my life I had fantasized about having a suicide kit just to keep at the ready. And when I finally had all the enough, right? When I put them all in one bottle and I held it up like it was some kind of holy grail that I'd been questing for. And I stared at it and I thought, my timing sucks. I'm happy now. The darkness that I had lived in since childhood had been lit in the fire of other people's stories. The future had always looked so bleak to me that I'd been afraid to have kids or even a plant. But a few months after I threw those pills out, the darkness was still gone, and I thought, holy crap, I could get kittens. And my cats turned 7 this year. I have 11 years clean now, and I've lost over 100 pounds, and I didn't need applause for that. I overcame social anxiety. I work in marketing now, which is a total people skills job. And if there's one thing I've learned by surviving a suicide attempt, or a couple suicide attempts and a drug overdose, it's that looking for ways that I'm the same as other people makes me so much happier than looking for ways that I'm different. And that's why tonight is so special. I've been sneaking into the corridor watching the storytellers, and everybody has been so amazing tonight that it's just, it's like a dream come true for me. So thank you, all of you, and to my co-director, Susan Fee, who's here tonight too. So that's why I'm rebranding depression, and I invite you to join me. A friendly conversation, or even just a smile, can change somebody's life. Let's make talking about behavioral health issues so much fun that people who've been happy and well-adjusted all their lives will feel like they're missing out. Let's be the fire that lights somebody else's darkness. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to come stand in between our amazing cast this year. This is the 3rd year we've done the Brainpower Chronicles. I want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to ask you to stay for a few more minutes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lauren Simons, the Executive Director of NAMI Washington. And as many of our storytellers have shared tonight, throughout our state, we have 19 local affiliates which provide services in their communities. The past 3 years, we've been able to have different casts telling their stories, sharing with you the intimate details of their lives. And this was Bill's brainchild. He came to us 3 years ago. Our first year, we put the show together in 3 months. And last year, we took a whole 9 months. This year, our premiere cast and members of our 2018 cast formed a special cast and presented at the NAMI National Convention, which was held in Seattle this past June. And as you all got to see, this is our 2019 cast. And as we head into 2020, we will, of course, have a 2020 cast. But in order to support our affiliates, many members of our casts have agreed to create traveling shows. So we're about to enter 2020 packaging the Brainpower Chronicles to be fundraisers for any of our 19 local affiliates in their communities. Thank you. Our cast members are all volunteers, and they have dedicated the past 9 to 10 months of their lives honing their stories, rehearsing them, and working with Bill and Susan and each other. So I would like to invite up our Director of Philanthropy, Lauren Hunter, and our Program Manager, Michelle Strait. We have gifts and recognition for our cast. That I would like to give out. Just so you all know, we have flowers for each of you. Please pass out the flowers. And then for each cast member, we like to give these marble paperweights, and they have their name, and it says the year that they were a cast member, and it is best not to drop them because I know that they do break. So, I'm going to be passing these out in no particular order, just whatever I happen to grab. And just so you know, tonight is the first time I've met the bulk of the cast. So I could very well give people the wrong award. So Ty, thank you so much. Alyssa, thank you. Doug, thank you so much. Dinah. Where is our musical guest, Josh Davis? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. And why don't you come on out here, too? Yes. Where's the broken one? This is broken. Okay. I would like to do this one last. Is Casey Rame here tonight? No. Oh, okay. Casey wasn't able to be here. Emma? Thank you. Emma's one of the first people who I had contact with at NAMI, and she is just such a delight. Aislin, who I love working with. She works at NAMI Seattle. I'm excited for her workiversary, too. Gabriel, thank you so much for being our host and our MC this evening. Truly appreciate it. And Susan came to us this year. She was our assistant director, and Bill is passing his directing torch along to Susan, whom she is moving from assistant director to full director starting in 2020. And we're very excited. And in fact, 2 weekends ago, I was listening to the Moth Radio Hour, and I heard Susan's story. And it was pretty amazing. And she's incredibly talented, and we're delighted to have her as part of our family. And Bill, I just don't have words to thank you for making this possible and for bringing your skills, your passion, and your talent to NAMI. Thank you so much. Now, before you all go, in case you did not know, we have a small silent auction happening out front. We'll keep it open for the 5 minutes after all the lights go up. If you've bid on something, just hang out in the foyer, and as soon as most people go away, we will let you take your item. And I would like just to have one more amazing round of applause for our cast and Elliot and our musical guests. Thank you all for coming. All right.